はい、というわけでクリエイティブディレクターのジョナサンにもう本当ウォッチドッグスを作った人ということでいろいろお話を聞いてみたいと思います。まずはゲームが完成しておめでとうございます。
Oh, thank you very much. Like, we're really happy that it's coming out now.
でまず聞いてみたいのはクリエイティブディレクターということで新規 IP を作るのは今すごく大変だと思うんですね。で先ほどのレセプションの中でも5年間かけたと言っているんですけれども、その5年間をかけながらどのようなことでこう実際立ち上がって進んでいったのかっていうのを聞いてみたいと思います。
I think one of the main challenges, I think you're right, it's really difficult to make a new IP these days, and 5 years and a half was spent learning what Watch Dogs could become. I think like it starts with defining what the thematics are, like so the impact of technology on our society, all of that stuff, and then I think you need to start defining what will be the gameplay of that. New IP these days, I think needs to bring something to the table. It needs to change the game a bit. So we spent all of those years defining, I think, what would become dynamism for us, which means like hacking everything around you, but making sure the simulation responds to that, making sure every individual has their own privacy, their own information. And maybe with that, we thought we could change a bit the perception of players so that when they play the game and they have all of those possibilities, instead of saying, no, don't do that, that's a bad thing, we wanted to go and have this ethical code that is felt in the game. So that when you read the names of people, their salaries, their existence, it changes a bit what you want to do with them. And you might want to be more careful as a vigilante in how you're going to act around you. So I think most of those 5 years were in the execution of such an ecosystem to make sure that we never prevent the player to achieve what he wants to do on the split of a second. So it's kind of like we're making a music instrument for the player, and we spend all those years defining the language to make sure they can actually accurately express them with it.
そしてまずその5年間とか長い間作ってる間にまさにいろんな、ゲームシーンにも起こっていますし、そしてテクノロジー的にもまさに僕らが今 PS4 ってT シャツ着てますけど PS4 はなかったわけで、そういう部分のテクノロジーっていうのがいわゆるこのゲームを作る過程の中でどういうふうな作用をしたのかっていうのを聞いてみたいと思います。
I think the relationship was quite interesting actually. Like when they started, there was no such thing as next-gen consoles. We had high-end PC and the PlayStation 3 to work with and all of that stuff to define what would be Watch Dogs. So we wanted to push for, let's call it next-gen gameplay, push into how players could express themselves in the games of tomorrow. What I thought was fascinating is when we finally had the chance to kind of exchange with Sony, when they started to come to Ubisoft Montreal with Mark Cerny and all of those guys, they were showing the PlayStation 4 to us. They were selling the idea of the PlayStation 4, and we were selling that watchdog, and it felt like we were selling the same thing. It's like we were talking about hyperconnectivity, we were talking about online all the time, the seamless online with single-player players. So there was a lot of similarities in how we were approaching the thing. So I think that was the most beneficial exercise for us. Afterwards, I think technology is great, the machine is great, and it definitely facilitated our ability to execute on the game. But I think in the forefront for me was the philosophy behind it, how Sony approached things out that really pleased me in terms of how Watch Dogs was envisioned in our hand.
そしてストーリーっていう部分が僕今回日本語訳というものの監視をやらせていただいてすごくシームレスにそのゲームも奥深いんですけれどもそのゲームをプレイするプレイ感を損なわないでシームレスに物語も進んでいくというかなり難しいことにトライしてると思うんですけどもそれを発想自体をどう実現していったのかっていうのを聞いてみたいと思います。
So it's very important if you want to bring the player to express himself naturally. You need to have this level of seamlessness between the elements. I think you need to blend narrative and the gameplay in a nice way, and it's very hard to do indeed. Like you need to make sure that the script and what you do are communicating with each other quite well. I don't think it stops there though. Afterwards, like you need to make sure every time you act something, it's flawlessly simple. That's why you have an X, you know, like that shows us like it feels very natural to simply search around and try and experiment if you want. There's been so many games coming out where it felt almost like, and I'm not saying that in a fully negative way, but it sometimes feels like work. You feel like you're learning a lot of stuff. Watch Dogs can be that kind of guy. kind of game. You could end up feeling like you have too much stuff to learn on top of the story going on and everything. So what we ended up doing is saying, let's just teach the basic. Let's teach them how to search for information, like finding the accent pressing, experimenting, going back to the old days of gaming where people were discovering the solution instead of getting it thrown at the throat, if you want. So that helped us a lot, and that's kind of through this that we also went through Seamless Online at the end, where the same thing needs to happen when an online match starts or someone comes into your game. It needs to be as simple as that, like in a weird way, if you want. Like when we started Watch Dogs, we were looking a lot at players, how they live their lives. It's almost like we were more designers and game designers, if you want. And one thing that was obvious is we have those matchmaking things in video games these days. It takes a lot of steps to go connected, and it can be quite intimidating to people. And at the same time, those players who are quite intimidated are more connected than in games. They have their phone, they talk with their friends, so we just went, wait a minute, it's like real life is better and online than games. So we need to catch up there, and we started to do a bit the same that we did with the story, is trying to always have everything seamlessly, organically happen in the game so that the immersion takes up a notch. Like it's like we're achieving a new level of immersion to an extent, not because the story is blended with gameplay, not because online is seamless, because everything is kind of seamless, the most that we can do it, so that way players can feel compelled to explore maybe aspects of game that they were not inclined to do in the past.
船に乗れたり電車に乗れたりするところですごくいろんな幅広いことがある街なんだなっていうのを今回来て初めて分かって、そしてゲームがああいうふうにいろんな乗り物に乗れたりすることに、こだわったところっていうのもすごく感じました。
The freedom is key to interactivity. You know, there's different style of game design. It's almost like painting if you want. Like you can decide to go very roller coaster ride and push for something spectacular and grand, but very controlled. Like I said at the beginning, I see more Watch Dogs like a music instrument. I'm really into seeing players blow our minds and create stuff with the dynamics of the game that will push them to the next level. I think when you want to make a commentary, or at least bring players to reflect on a subject, to use interactivity to do it is the most powerful way of going for it. So by saying hacking is your weapon, if you want, and making sure that everybody can express themselves completely freely using it, you have a better chance of him stepping back down afterwards, like having a little step back, talk to their friend around a beer after they finish the game and go, what was that game about? What was the journey of Aiden Pierce? And then take their own experience, their own choices they made in the game. A bit like you would see a painting if you wanted to make their own interpretation of the story. We could have went with, you know, like multiple endings and stuff like that, but I always felt like, first of all, it's very hard to do. Second of all, I feel like we always end up with like a few bullet points. It's like we're saying your brain can interpret these bullet points. It's a bit simplistic. And instead of saying here's the ending, it's open to your interpretation, and we made sure in the game that you could always choose the way you play, and it would reply in a logical way, so you can actually feel like you can use all of that experience to define your own interpretation of the game.
僕たちは日本のメディアなんですけれども、PS4 のオフィシャルなんですが、日本の、ゲームファンだったりウォッチドッグスをすごい待ってる人たちに最後に一言いただきたいと思います。
Yeah, definitely. I think that for the Japanese players, first of all, for me, it's a great honor to have people that put interest into Watch Dogs from the Japanese culture. It's those guys that actually define my reasons for making the game in the first place. You know, like Miyamoto-san, like Kojima-san, all of those guys made and shaped the game that inspired me for decades. So it's great for me to be able to give in return, and if they can actually embrace the instrument and push with their honesty and their own culture, their own expression of how to solve problems in Watch Dogs, that's going to be way more than I can ask for as a return for making that game.
いつかエイデンが日本に来ることを期待してます。
That would be nice. That would be interesting to explore this idea. A nice challenge for us to nail that culture for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Subject, Aiden Pierce.
Yeah, I can see him.